It is time for us to say, we're going to start living differently. We're going to have a civilization that is peaceful, that has free zero-point energy, that is just, and that is living in complete peace with itself and with others. And we are not going to go into space with weapon systems. We are not going to go into space looking for another alienism, another group to fight. And that if someone tries to stage an event, we're all going to call it out as the hoax that it is, and not go along with that, what I'm calling scripted Armageddon. They would love to see a shutdown of our civilization and the extermination of about 5 billion people through a conflict that they will stage. And they will manufacture Armageddon. And that's the big, deep plan that has been in place since the 50s. Those people in the intelligence community who know of this, I can't even put in words the extent to which they are devastated when they learn of it. Because they know how these folks are utilizing religiosity, racism, alienism, division to keep the fire burning. But the big one is going to be the launch of a hoaxed attack on the planet that would look 100% like an extraterrestrial event, and it is not. Now, when you also consider, anyone see Michael Jackson a couple years ago after he died in that holographic dance? Cool, huh? That's a declassified technology. You want to guess what's in the classified systems? You want to guess? 1,000 times better than that Michael Jackson on the stage. That looked 100% like him actually dancing. So let's begin to expose the fraud. Let's begin to expose this, not for the sake of rabble-rousing, but to awaken people to the danger. And then let's say, what are we going to do next? Because if you, look, you cannot, it's axiomatic, you cannot prove a negative, right? You already know that you can't prove a negative. However, if there were civilizations out there that were a threat to Earth and humanity, I think we'd know it by now. Secondly, if they are out there and they're operating sub rosa in a nefarious way, what's the solution to that? Weapon systems? When you're dealing with civilizations that are trans-dimensional interstellar, where they have a weapon system that they could hit a planet with a energy field and turn it into a pink dust floating through space and destroy that entire sphere? That capability exists. No, that's not the answer. And Martin Luther King had it right, and Christ had it right, and Gandhi had it right. Those approaches are not the correct approach. So even if there was such an existential threat, it cannot be managed by warmongers and militarists and people with these other agendas. We need to put together what I called for years ago a council on interplanetary relations that is devoted to peace and space, to the wise elders and youngsters of the planet, to work on this issue and deal with it openly. And this is something that is of the greatest import and urgency of anything in our lives. Because even if we bring out free energy and anti-gravity, but we live on this planet with the consciousness of division and hatred and warfare, that too will be weaponized, and it'll still destroy the planet. So that in and of itself isn't a solution. So this spiritual understanding of the essential oneness of life and the need for not just world peace, but universal peace. And that we are the generation, those of us living on Earth at this time between the mid-20th century and the mid-21st century. I always joke that those of us between puberty and senility. Unfortunately, I'm getting closer to the latter. I know I have 8 grandchildren. Scary, me being a grandfather. 4 daughters and 8 grandchildren. So 8 grandchildren, beautiful, beautiful beings. That we owe it to our children and to the generations coming behind us, after us. Because the way I understand this is that we're closing out one era in the human experience, several 100,000 years in development. We're opening another era that's about 500,000 years in length, a cycle, universal cycle. And that cycle, the hallmark of it is universal peace. It'll be a day not followed by night, is how it is said. That there will be a period, we'll enter into peace on this planet and peace in space, but we will not slide back into the darkness of war, which has happened in the last cycle. There were periods of peace on Earth, like the Shambhala Kingdom and Enlightenment, but it always slid back into darkness. This next cycle is different. But how do you start that cycle? It's not going to be some Ouija board in the sky or someone's going to come down. And it's not going to be ETs landing on the White House lawn. It's us, the children of Earth, understanding this and creating that reality. It's time. It's time for us to do that. Thank you very much. Let's take about a 15-minute break and we'll come back for some question and answers. All right. So are the webinar folks okay? You're good? You're hot? All right, thank you very much for returning on time. So we're going to go for about another 40 minutes. I'd like to entertain questions from the audience. I will repeat the question since there's no microphone. And I did want to thank Michael Schratt again for this. I mean, I didn't go through all this, but the camera can zoom in on this. It's sort of a composite of all these different sightings that have been reported for decades. Even back in the 60s, there was one from Venezuela, I believe. And the kind of aircraft there are that are anti-gravities. And just as you look at all these, imagine these and more. Now these are more conventional, that look a little similar with the B-2 stealth and the evolution of all those sort of aircraft. But these are in a deeper, more classified program that are the electromagnetogravitics. But then imagine that you have ones that could look like discs. You could have ones that could look like tubes. You could have one that looked like triangular boomerangs. And these are all man-made. Now, again, as I said earlier, there are extraterrestrial vehicles that wouldn't be quite like this, but it could be a similar shape. Diamond shape, saucer shape, disc, spherical, just a perfect sphere, which I've seen close up, and other shapes. And so this gets into the ability to piggyback. I call it piggybacking, where you have an ET event happen, you come in with something that's man-made, confuse people. Somebody has a contact experience with ETs, they come in and piggyback onto it and target that person with a man-made abduction experience. You have some, so this is how counterintelligence operates. And you have to begin to wire your brain like that to understand the sort of Machiavellian and convoluted ways that they practice the art of deception in the counterintelligence field. And if you don't learn that, then you're going to be vulnerable to being very, very deceived. And I think this is why sharing this information for me is really key right now, because I can't tell you that in X number of days an event's going to happen. All I can say is that there's an event that's been planned, and I know people who've been on the planning committees and on the operational tactical committees, agencies for this, that I've met with personally. And as I was saying at the break, someone asked me, this came up, one of the hardest things I've had to deal with is for every disclosure project witness, and if you want to find out more about what we do, it's SiriusDisclosure.com, S-I-R-I-U-S, like the star system, SiriusDisclosure.com. If you go to that site, you'll see there's just hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of pages of information and links to all these military witnesses, documents, what have you. But for every person up there, or that I have in my archive on film, there's at least 10 to 20 that I've interviewed who will not go on the record because they're afraid of reprisals and afraid of being tweeped. terminate with extreme prejudice, assassinated. So this threat is serious, and it's caused the best, but it puts me in an untenable situation, because I am hearing already echoing around the world in the UFO subculture howls at some of what I've shared tonight. And what I'd like to be able to do is bring forward 2 or 3 dozen of these men and women, a few women, who have been in these corporations and programs doing this. They won't do it, because like Rick Foch in Naval Research Labs, most of them have been told point blank, if you do, you're dead, and your family's dead. In fact, my military advisor for a number of years was in an unacknowledged special access project, and when they first formulated it, he was taken into an underground facility, an undisclosed underground facility, a SCIF, a Secure Communication Information or Intelligence Facility, called a SCIF. And all their electronics, watches, everything were taken away, and they went down, and there was the security enforcement officer for that operation had a gun, took a bullet out of the clip, and said, if any of you speak to anyone about this operation, and that includes your commanding officer, the president, anybody, a member of your family, this bullet will find you, and you are a dead man. And this is a man of the utmost credibility. So this sort of illegal operation that where we have killed our own, and the funding mechanism for this aren't just the black budget of the United States. It's been drug running. I had a man who was an executive with Science Applications International Corporation and a former member of Congress who was Bush Sr.'s consigliere on a lot of this, who met with me back in the late 90s and confirmed to me the involvement in these rogue operations with the arms trade, the drug trade, and trafficking, and that it generated enormous revenues for them in untraceable cash. And some of these anti-gravity devices have been used to ferry drugs and arms around the world for this purpose. So this story gets deeper and deeper. We could be, if we were here for not 2 hours but 2 weeks, we wouldn't exhaust the sort of depravity that I've come across in these operations. And the one thing that this former congressman and member, this executive with Science Applications International Corporation, SAIC, it's a big contracting entity that deals with a lot of this, told me, he said, do you realize that there are 8,000, and this was back in '97, that we know that we had 8,000 people in a secret army dealing with this movement of drugs, and that we have already killed 2,000 of them for minor infractions of security and secrecy. And they said, do you have any idea how ruthless and dangerous this group is? I said, yes, I do. And of course, I had found out some years before of this operation and had dealt with a woman in South Dakota who, with Senator Daschle, was trying to get to the bottom of one of the operating centers that was adjacent to her large sheep ranch she had, where they were transshipping drugs and using anti-gravity devices to move chemical weapons and drugs in and out of that facility. And this does sound like it gets deeper and deeper and crazier. But that's what you're dealing with these folks. And as that gentleman said 25 years ago, the truth is more bizarre than the fiction people believe. And if you speak the truth, no one will believe you. All I can do is tell you the truth as I've uncovered it. And if I had only one data point, one person sharing what I've shared tonight, I wouldn't have shared it. I have dozens. And in those dozens of people spanning many countries, not just the United States, these points have been confirmed. And in my own little way, all I can do, short of those folks stepping forward, is to share with you as forthrightly as I can the truth. So keep that in mind as you ask questions. I always tell people, be careful what you ask, you might get the answer. So with that, I'll entertain. Oh, we do? Awesome, great. So let's hear, you can pass it to the nearest and dearest. Yes, yes.